Double Trouble with Ginormica and Ryung. Written by Iddunow. Ginormica sighed and wiped some sweat off her brow, splashing it down onto the rubble below. It had been weeks since Susan had gone on her rampage through the city and all the damage still hadn't been fully repaired, meaning she was still busy working to help repair it. She barely had any free time at all anymore since her rampage, and she was starting to get antsy about having to work on repairing the city all day. More than that, she was really starting to miss the power she felt when she was rampaging through the city. Looking at the workers who were on the ground, she started imagining how good they would all feel under her feet. Then she realized that they, along with the military people nearby, had all stopped to look at her. "Oh, don't mind me, you guys, I'm just taking a quick break. Man, it's so hot outside today. I hope you don't mind if I take my shoes off for a bit," she said, but before she could get to it, a huge portal, more than big enough for her, opened up beside her. She frowned at it, wondering what it might be. Then suddenly a giant human arm stretched out from the portal, grabbed her by the shoulder, and pulled her through. On the other side, Ginormica stumbled uneasily before regaining her balance, then looked up and was surprised to find herself standing in front of an Asian giantess, one so tall that Susan only came up to her chest. "Welcome, Susan," the Asian woman said. You know who I am?" "Wait, who are you? And where did you bring me?" Susan asked, looking around at the new location around her. She and the other giantess were standing on the outskirts of a coastal city. At their feet were some little people running around in fear, people who looked a bit like humans but had bluish skin and little horns on their heads. "My name is Ryung," the other woman began. "I'm a giantess, like you, and I've been one since birth. I'm a human from a different world than your own. I can travel or peer into different worlds thanks to my technology," she said, showing off a high-tech bracelet to Susan. "I found you some time ago when I was looking at many different planets for other people like me, but I didn't want to cause trouble in your world, so I chose not to contact you until now. Susan, I need your help. A friend of mine, Lix, has been captured by this planet's military and taken into captivity. I need you to come with me into the city and help me look for her." Susan considered it for a moment. The woman's story sounded strange, but then, Susan had been through stranger. She was willing to help, but there was one thing she wanted to know first. "You don't mind if I take the opportunity to let loose and have a little fun, do you?" Looking around at all the little people running from them, she figured this was the perfect opportunity for her to take advantage of her size for some rampaging. "I thought you'd ask that," Ryung said with a smile. "I don't mind at all. As long as you don't hurt anyone, you can do whatever you want." "Great!" Susan exclaimed. With her powers, she would have no trouble making sure no one was hurt. "I'll help you all you want, then, thank you, Susan," Ryung said, giving her a quick hug. "Now follow me. Oh, and if you see anyone attacking us, be sure to take them down, okay?" Nodding, Susan followed Ryung into the city, which she soon saw was much like any human city, but the buildings were boxier and the streets wider, being wide enough for her and Ryung to walk side by side. The place was more polluted, with the bitter smell of smoke hanging over everything. Though of course, the locals, having lived there all their lives, were quite used to all that smoke and pollution. What they weren't used to was the rumbling of the earth as the two giantesses stepped menacingly through their city. Meanwhile, Bolga packed her suitcase as the earth kept shaking outside. "Stop that. We have no time. We have to flee right now." Her husband screamed at her, with their 2 children in tow, ready to leave their home. She knew he was right, but it wasn't easy to leave everything behind. With a heavy heart, she followed her husband down the stairs of their apartment building. But when they went outside into the open streets, there was absolute chaos already, with everyone leaving their cars behind and screaming like mad as the gigantic aliens came closer and closer with earth-shaking steps. With so much traffic, they could barely walk at all, let alone run away from the giantesses. Bolga looked up in awe and fear as one of the huge colossi came over them. Was this their end? Bolga fell to her knees, hugging her two children one last time. Her husband did the same with tears in his eyes. As Ginormica and Ryung entered the city, they couldn't help but grin, seeing all the people panicking and trying to run away. Once she got to the crowd of people, Ryung smiled and waved at them, then raised her bare foot high overhead before bringing it down with a satisfying stomp. Feeling the tiny people squirming under her. Among those people was Bolga's entire family. The scared family was overwhelmed by the sight of the descending bear soul that took their entire view. They could do nothing but accept their fate as they all got pressed down to the ground and into the giantess' warm skin. For a strange reason, it felt kinda comfortable to get pressed into that soft soul. At least it was not painful to die this way, Bolga thought as the pressure grew more and more until she passed out. She, her family and countless other people remained stuck to Ryung's soul, even as she took another step. Then Susan gladly followed Ryung's lead in stepping on the little people. "Oh, I can actually feel them under my feet even with my shoes on," she exclaimed. She hadn't felt so this big and powerful since her last rampage, and it was beyond amazing. She loved the crunching sounds of cars that got compressed beneath her shoes, and to hear the screams of all those panicking alien people in the streets. They looked so adorably scared and helpless, and she was delighted to see big crowds of them disappearing under her shoes with every step she took. It was an amazing feeling for her, especially knowing how terrifying it must be for the people under them who couldn't know that there was no real danger for them. She and Ryung kept on stepping on more and more crowds of aliens as they walked along the winding street which turned this way, and that until Ryung suddenly came to a stop. "What's the matter?" Susan asked. "Are we there yet?" "No. In fact, I think I'm a bit lost. I can't tell where we're going with all these buildings blocking the view. Hang on, I'm going to ask for directions from the locals." The Asian giantess punched the side of a nearby building, busting open a huge hole, then reached inside and felt around for a bit before pulling out a handful of the little blue-skinned people. "All right, I'm going to need you folks to answer a question for me," she said to them sternly. "Some days ago your military captured a friend of mine, a sort of giant purple monster. I know one of you must know where she is, there's no way they could have brought her in without everyone seeing her. So tell me, where are they keeping her?" The people in her hand exchanged glances, then looked back at her. We don't know anything at all about that." "Honest," one of them said. "Please let us go. We really can't help you." Ryung wasn't convinced. Though. The way the man spoke, and the way the people were acting, she could tell they were hiding something from her. "If you can't answer me, then I have no use for you. I'll just have to get rid of you here and now," she said, slowly curling her fingers closed, threatening to crush the people in her hand. Wait, please. Let us go. We haven't done anything wrong," the man yelled together with some of the others. All of them were thrown into a panic, with some backing away from the encroaching fingers while others tried to push against them. Susan watched intently as Ryung's fingers closed in on them. Unsure as to what would happen. Was Ryung really going to crush them? She couldn't quite believe it, considering Ryung had asked her not to hurt anyone while they were rampaging, but the expression on the other giantess's face looked like she was totally serious about this. It really did look like she was going to crush them, right until the same man spoke up again. Okay. I know where your friend is. She's in the industrial complex on the north side of the city. Just follow that street all the way and you'll get to it eventually. Please don't hurt us, we all have families to take care of." There, see? That wasn't so hard, was it? Now hold on while I get you back on the ground. Grinning devilishly, Ryung started tipping her hand over slowly, making the people on it scream and beg her to stop. She didn't listen, though, and just kept smiling as her hand was turned further and further. The people tried to grab onto her fingers so they wouldn't fall, but she dislodged them with a shake of her hand, sending all of them tumbling to the ground, where they landed with a soft thump, dazed but otherwise unhurt. Then, before they could recover from the shock, she brought her foot down on them and held it there, enjoying the feeling of all of them squirming around until one by one they all fell still, having passed out under her soul. When she took her foot off of them again, Susan leaned over for a closer look and saw that they were all okay, just unconscious. "So, do you have a power like mine that protects people from getting crushed by you?" she asked, standing up again. "Something like that. It's not so much a power as it is another function of my bracelet," Ryung explained as she set off down the street the man had directed them to. "I see. By the way, I get the impression that this is all something you've done before. Like, rampaging through a city and stepping on people. Is that right?" Ryung laughed. "Oh, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Although, it's a bit more complicated than that. I don't usually rampage it for fun, only when it's necessary for some mission. But I figure if I'm going to be doing it, I might as well have some fun with it." "That sounds great. Back home, if I destroy anything, I have to help fix it, and it takes such a long time. And it sucks because sometimes I get an urge to go on a rampage, but I can't. I wish I could go on missions like yours all the time." "I totally get what you mean," Ryung said. "And don't worry, I'm sure I could find something else you can help me with after we're done here." "Really? You'd do something like that for me?" "Sure. You've been super nice and helpful so far, and once we rescue Lix we'll really owe you one." "Thank you, Ryung. Oh, by the way, that reminds me, you told the people back there that your friend Lix was a giant purple monster. Does that mean she's not a human?" "No, she isn't. She's well, you'll see her soon enough. I wouldn't want to ruin the surprise," Ryung said. "By the way, keep an eye out for the military. We're getting close to their base, so they should be showing up very soon." Sure enough, it wasn't long before their first encounter with the military as a helicopter flying overhead pelted them with bullets. Ginormica's powers and Ryung's technology prevented any serious damage from befalling them, but they still felt the bullets as an annoying prickle on their skin. "Think you can take care of this annoyance?" Ryung asked. "With pleasure," Susan said. The helicopter was beyond her or Ryung's reach, but that was an easy enough problem for her to solve. Jumping up, she grabbed the ledge of a nearby building and pulled herself up, then jumped again to swat the helicopter down before it could fly away. As she landed back on the building, the whole thing crumbled under her weight and she fell flat on her ass, while the helicopter went spiraling out of control to finally land on the street in front of Ryung. "Wow, that was great," Ryung said, helping Susan back to her feet while the people crawled out of the wreckage of the building. "I can tell you'll be a lot of help today." Thanks," Susan said bashfully. "I have a lot of experience fighting monsters and aliens and all kinds of stuff like that. So these guys should be no problem." Once she was up, the two of them turned to the wreckage of the helicopter as the pilot was crawling out of it. The pilot froze up when he noticed the two giantesses walking over to him, with really upset expressions that didn't bode well for him at all. He got up and tried to run away from them, but he could feel the earth shaking as the giantesses went after him, stomping on thousands of running civilians who got in her way. They caught up to him in just a few seconds, and then he was flattened to the ground, along with some other aliens who had the bad luck of being close when Susan stomped on him, grinding his body under her unforgiving converse shoe. Then when she lifted her foot from him, Ryung did the same, stomping down and twisting her barefoot over him, driving him deeper into her soul and into the earth, until he was passed out half buried in the middle of a foot-shaped crater in the street. Satisfied, the giantesses left him behind. As they continued on their way, they ran into numerous other military forces, mainly helicopters and a few soldiers on the street. They were an annoyance, even if easily dealt with, but their presence told Ryung that they were headed the right way. A few minutes later, they finally came upon the military complex they had been told about. It consisted of a bunch of warehouses and factories, and it was swarming with soldiers in tanks and helicopters, wielding all sorts of weapons among the warehouses and factories that stretched out for perhaps as much as a mile. Looks like they sent out the welcoming party for us, Ryung quipped. I think I'm going to need my sandals for this. With a wave she caused the appearance of a pair of Birkenstock sandals on the ground in front of her, which she then stepped into. All right, let's go take care of these guys. The two giantesses were totally unfazed by all the artillery arrayed against them and by the threats from the military commanders, ordering them to leave the city. They walked over casually, not breaking their stride even when the military began pelting them with all sorts of weapons, only stopping once the giantesses were about to step on them. You take care of these guys while I go look for licks, Ryung said to Susan. Then she went further into the military complex, stomping out anything that stood in her way. Even the buildings themselves, all of them crunching quite nicely under her sandals. Some of the troops slid off to follow Ryung and keep attacking her, while Susan kept dealing with the others. She stomped and kicked at the soldiers and tanks, and pretty soon she had them all running away in fear of her. Most soldiers have been shivering in terror when the white-haired giantess came over them. With a playful smile, Ginormica lifted her converse shoe over a big group of soldiers, showing them all the bodies and debris stuck to her sole before slamming her huge shoe down on them, pressing them all deeply into her shoe print. Then Susan turned her attention to the helicopters, swatting a pair of them out of the air before going after a third one, whose pilot was trying to get away from her. She caught up to him easily, though, and grabbed his helicopter in her hands, peering in through the window to give the pilot a fearsome glare before crushing the copter in her hands. As she did, her powers kept the pilot safe and made an opening in the metal for him. When she dropped the helicopter on the ground, the pilot was knocked out of it and dawdled along the ground for a bit before coming to a stop, then she joyfully stepped on him, leaving him underfoot until he had passed out. Then, looking around the area, Susan saw that most of the soldiers had left their weapons behind and were running away from her, together with other people who were streaming out of the surrounding buildings. Seeing that, she figured it was best to go see if Ryung needed help with anything. So she set out to follow her, leaving behind her a trail of shoe prints, many of them filled with tiny people she had stepped on. She soon caught up with Ryung, who was stomping her way through another factory at the time, kicking down its smoke towers as she passed them by. Once on the other side, she was met with a bunch more soldiers facing her down in front of a huge metal hatch on the ground. This is it, Ryung said. This is where they're keeping her. Susan, will you help me deal with these people so we can finally free Licks? Gladly, Susan said, taking off her shoes to reveal her white-socked feet while Ryung took off her sandals and sent them back to wherever they'd come from. The two giantesses shared a grin, then they went after the gathered troops. The soldiers, though they had been ordered to stop the two, really didn't feel up to the task, and so as soon as they saw their weapons weren't doing anything to the giantesses, they dropped their weapons and tried to get away. But Ryung and Susan wouldn't let them escape and risk them becoming a problem later on. They lumbered after the fleeing soldiers and smothered them under their feet in groups, with as many as 20 or more at a time being caught under Susan's sweaty socks or Ryung's bare feet and held there, subject to the powerful smells of their feet, until they slowly, one by one, blacked out under them. Once all the soldiers were taken care of, Susan sat on the ground and turned her foot over, looking at the dozens of men who were now stuck to the bottom of her sock.
Aww.
Are you guys passed out already? Such a shame, I barely got a chance to have fun with you first. But I guess that's what happens when a bunch of weaklings try to take on two giantesses like us, she said, playfully scrunching her feet. Meanwhile, Ryung had walked up to the hatch on the ground and knocked on it. Licks? Are you in there? Ryung, a voice called from inside. Ryung, is that you? Yes, it is. I'm here to get you out of there. Oh, thank goodness. Ryung. I've tried to break out already, but this hatch resists everything I can hit it with. I think you'll need to use your laser on it. Alright, I'll do that. Now stand back so you don't get hit by accident. Ryung aimed her left arm forward, then pressed a button on her bracelet with her other hand and made a green laser shoot out of it. When the laser hit the middle of the metal hatch, the area around the point of impact started transforming. Slowly it turned into plant matter, sprouting little leaves and stems and branches. A moment later the whole thing shook violently as it was struck from the inside once, twice, and once more until the hatches were forcefully opened. Out of the hole in the ground jumped Licks, a giant humanoid axolotl monster who stood even taller than Ryung, or about twice as tall as Ginormica. Now free, the purple axolotl let out a furious roar that even spooked Susan a bit. She scanned the ground for a moment, then her eyes seized on something and she stomped over towards it, heedless of all the destruction she was causing. Finally she took one more step that cut off her targets, a pair of scientists who had been fleeing from the titaness. Licks stood over the two puny figures, scowling at them as they trembled between her feet. Looks like you won't be able to finish up your examination of me, docs? Oh, but don't worry, I'll let you get one real close look at me before I leave. She raised a foot over the two scientists, who were frozen in place out of fear, staring up at her huge purple soul. Licks waited a moment before lowering her foot onto them, wanting to savor this moment of power over her two tormentors. Before finally smothering the two under her soul, twisting her foot on the ground to make sure they felt at least a little pain even through the protection her bracelet offered them. Finally she gave a satisfied nod and turned away from the scientists towards her rescuers. Ryung, it's so good to see you again, she exclaimed, pouncing on the shorter giantess to give her a bear hug, holding her really tight and even lifting her a little bit off the ground before letting her go. I'm so glad you came to rescue me. I really owe you one. Don't worry about it, Licks. You did the same for me not too long ago, remember? But tell me, who were those two people you went stomping after? Those creeps? Licks said, scowling at the mere thought of them. They were the scientists tasked by the military with examining me. They were going to study my biology so they could figure out a way for the military to mind control me. They meant to turn me into their living weapon. They were pretty close to figuring it out, too, or I heard them say the last time I saw them. That's awful. Ryung said. Is it safe to leave them here, then? Maybe we should keep them captive. Or at least destroy their research. Oh, I'm pretty sure you already did. That was their lab over there, see? Licks said, pointing to a building that Ryung had destroyed earlier. I really have to say thanks again for rescuing me. Who knows what would have happened if you hadn't found me until later. Yeah, well, I'm not the only one you have to thank. A new friend helped out too. Ryung said, waving Susan over. Susan, this is Licks. Licks, this is Susan, she helped me fight the military and free you. It's so good to meet you, Susan. Thank you for helping me out today. Licks said, giving the smaller giantess a hug. Why you're welcome, Miss Licks, Susan said, feeling a bit flustered. Just Licks is fine, Susan. Say, that's a really cool hair color you have. Is that normal for your species? Well, kinda. When we get old our hair starts turning white. Oh, so you're an older woman for your species. No, not really. My hair turned white after I was hit with the meteorite that gave me my powers and made me a giantess. I suppose you could say I'm a bit of a mutant, or a monster as people call me. Actually, most of them call me Ginormica. Ginormica? That's a cool name. Say, what about your feet? Are they also white because of your mutation? My feet? Susan asked, looking down in confusion. Oh, no, those are just my socks. They're fun to step on people with. See? Susan leaned over to take off her sock, which still had a bunch of people stuck to it, then showed it to Lix. Oh. That's kinda weird, but I guess it's a cultural thing? Yeah, I suppose you could say that. Alright. Sorry to interrupt you too, Ryung said, but we need to get going. There's probably some battleships on the way here, and even the three of us can't handle one of those. Susan, I'll send you home first. Thanks a lot for all your help today, I really owe you one, and I'll try to pay you back for it after I get Lix back home. You're welcome. I was glad to help, Susan said as the portal opened up. Bye, Susan. Thanks for all your help today, I really owe you one. If there's ever anything that you need from me, just let me know. Susan looked at Lix, considering her offer. Say, Lix? Tell me if I'm wrong, but I get the impression that you're the sort of person who would enjoy pretending to be a rampaging monster. Is that right? Oh, sure. I do it all the time. There's nothing in the world more fun than that. And have you ever heard of Tokyo? Tokyo? No, what's that? Some kind of food. No, it's a city. A big city, where pretty much all our giant monster movies take place, really. Sounds like a cool place. I'd love to go there sometime. Susan smiled. Well, if you're ever free to do me a favor, I'd love it if you could visit my world and go on a rampage there. It would be the perfect excuse for me to visit Tokyo and to have fun accidentally wrecking some buildings while fighting a big bad monster. Oh, that sounds like fun. I'd love to do it once I've had some time to recover. Thanks so much, Lix. Good. Bye, both of you. Susan said, waving at them as she went into the portal. Taking one last look back before going all the way through, she smiled at her new friends, hoping she would see them again sometime soon. The end. This was Double Trouble with Ginormica and Ryung, originally written by Iddunow. The link to the original story and the link to the title picture is in the description. We hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Of course, we also look forward to your opinion in the comments. And if you want to support our work, check out our Patreon page. Thank you, and see you next time.